My name is Jonah Edelman. I'm the co-founder of the MLT Racial Equity at Work Certification Program. It is our pleasure to have you join us today to learn about this comprehensive racial equity improvement program. We are focused on enabling you to hear from your peers. That's the most important thing. And we have a wonderful group today of partners that we've been working with for a considerable period of time that have made tremendous improvements. The run of show is going to be that I'll provide a very short overview and then hand it off to our managing director, the wonderful Crystal Lenise Walker, who is going to then introduce and moderate our panel. So let's start with an overview. We'll keep it brief. I'm going to keep it to 10 minutes. And start by sharing a little bit about MLT, Management Leadership for Tomorrow. We're a 20-year-old nonprofit organization, which is the leading racial equity partner for the private sector in the US. Many of you may be familiar with MLT based on our pipeline programs. We have more than 10,000 Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous alums working in corporate America, and currently 3,000 undergrads and MBA students in our fellowship programs. In addition, we have programs that help with advancement and retention and mid-career recruitment. We started the MLT Racial Equity at Work program right after George Floyd's murder. It launched in October of 2020, and since then, there's been a tremendous community of committed companies that have chosen to participate, and as you'll see shortly, have made tremendous progress. You'll see on the list that there's a wide range of companies in terms of sectors, sizes, public and private, and where they are in their journey toward racial equity. This is a program for all and adds value no matter where you are on the journey. There's a quote at the bottom that you might want to take a quick look at from a partner who's been a very valued partner, Bain Capital, which has progressed incredibly through their involvement. Let's talk about the 4 value adds of the program. There are four key components. And as I said, this is a comprehensive improvement program. Oftentimes, when people see certification program, they think in their mind, oh, I know what that is. We send a bunch of information in at one time and we get on a list or not. This is very different than that. This is not a typical survey or index that's impersonal and one size fits all. It truly is a comprehensive improvement program that's high touch, high trust, confidential, supportive, and positive, and very much engages with you all in terms of the nuances of where your companies are on the journey and how to support you to make progress. The first key value add is measurement. We've designed a very thoughtful system for enabling you to efficiently determine where you are on the journey to Black equity and Hispanic equity using a very user-friendly and secure digital platform that we've developed and refined. And so the engagement starts with inputting information that you have readily available, typically, which is not sensitive, that enables you to efficiently get your initial score. We call that a baseline assessment. And we assign each of our partners with a partner success team of 2 from our staff, a seasoned DEI professional who's a tremendous thought partner, to the lead at our partners, and an associate who helps facilitate the journey. And then they provide a baseline report, which helps you understand where you are on the journey, and then enables a dialogue about what you want to prioritize in terms of progress. The measurement framework, to be clear, is just an assessment. There's no requirements built in. It's totally flexible and up to you as to what you want to pursue, but it helps you know where you are. And it also helps you see how you're progressing. And you'll see, as I mentioned, that there's been a lot of progress. The second phase is a planning consultation. That partner success team assists you in either, if you're in the early stage of your journey, developing a strong plan that will help you make progress or accelerate it. Or if you're in flight, which many of our partners are, help you refine and possibly supplement what you're doing to increase your pace of progress and potentially expand your impact. Again, we bring to this an orientation toward listening, toward understanding your situation. And we're not pushing you to achieve anything. It's about helping you make the most impact you can with the resources you have available. And you'll hear from our panel, but our intent is to really enable you to pursue the best practices to mitigate risk and maximize progress. We stay with you after we help you with that planning consultation and support your execution. This is an ongoing partnership and collaboration. And so that support entails quarterly check-ins, access to domain experts, including an amazing supplier diversity expert we have on our team, a steady flow of case studies, webinars, and connections with peers. We're building a learning and improvement community. It's really a tremendous network, and it provides a lot of support for those of you who individually are working hard and doing your best, often in isolation or with a small group of peers. We give you a broader group of peers with whom you can confer and share ideas and try to figure out the best ways to overcome challenges. Lastly, we have meaningful recognition. It's intentionally listed last year. This is not a program where it's about a brass ring to grab for. It's about a program that helps you improve based on where you are. You'll see in the coming slide that our partners start at a pretty high level, surprisingly high to many of them. They're further along than they think based on the comprehensiveness of our measurement. Our certification happens at 60 points out of a 110-point framework. So, you know, there can be a lot of opportunities for continued progress and you still reach certification. And you'll hear from our partners, all of whom are certified, that that's not the end for them. It's a milestone along the way. And it isn't meant to just be something to feel good about, though it obviously is important to feel good. It's also something that can help with recruitment, it can help with retention, and it can also help if you're a public company with investor relations. Let's talk about the components of the measurement, the pillars, quickly, just so you can see. I'm not going to spend a long time, but again, want to reinforce the notion that there is no required action in any particular area. What we set out to do is define Black equity and Hispanic equity so it's clear, and then identify the main levers within each of the pillars. And you'll see that there are 3 internal and 2 external that are the most important. And then assign a point value that enables you to assess progress. And I think we can move on to the next slide and just say that you'll see that there has been really tremendous progress across the board. It's been so gratifying to see our partners move the needle across the board. You know, this is an area where there's so much trepidation and skepticism and this sort of reflexive orientation of, oh, we've been there and we tried that and it didn't work. That's all too common and so untrue. That when you apply you know, a thoughtful, pragmatic, strategic orientation to this work, and you stick to it, progress happens. I mentioned it's a 110-point framework. You'll see that the median baseline score is just shy of the certification level. And that shows you that there are many companies that are further along, and I bet your companies are further along than you might even think. And then the certification score, you can see many of our companies are at that bronze level. We have some gold, and we're about to announce our first platinum certified company next month. And then most importantly is the growth. This is just so important to look at in this kind of environment. And in those of you who've been in this field, the sense that, oh, this is hard stuff. It is hard. But look at how our partners are moving the needle across all 5 pillars. And just to give you a sense, if you look at representation, there's 45 total points. So that 3-point gain represents 7% improvement in that pillar. And it's really across, you can see across the board. So there's a lot you can do and a lot of progress you can make. Now with that, I want to introduce Crystal Lenise Walker, who has done an amazing job leading our program, and she's going to introduce you to our panelists. Crystal.
Thank you, Jonah. And again, welcome everyone. So excited to have you here, but I'm even more excited for you to have the opportunity to hear from three of our phenomenal and stellar DEI leaders and partners in this space. And so without further ado, I want to take this time to introduce our panelists. So first up, we have Ms. Brenda Carr. Brenda Carr is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Arnold & Porter. She works closely with the firm's chair, their managing partners, their diversity and inclusion committee, practice group leaders, her fellow chiefs, and many other internal as well as external stakeholders to ensure that the firm manifests its core values and commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Through alignment with the firm's business goals, Brenda oversees effective implementation of the firm's diversity and inclusion objectives and strategies, from talent acquisition, retention, advancement, client service, and engagement within and outside of Arnold & Porter. Prior to joining the firm, Ms. Carr was on the diversity and inclusion team at DLA Piper, based in the Chicago office. She also spent a number of years in practice at Ropes and Gray, where her practice focused primarily on complex business litigation and labor and employment. And before her legal career, Ms. Carr worked in higher education administration at Tufts University Graduate School of Arts and Sciences and earned a master's degree in educational studies. She was also a Fulbright scholar in Madrid, Spain, which she did share with us she just recently returned from for a wonderfully fabulous and well-earned vacation. Next up, we have Ms. Lisette Enumah. Lisette Enumah is the current senior manager for Boston Consulting Group's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion team. She joined BCG in 2020 as a consultant and supported client projects in their social impact and consumer retail practice areas. Last year, she moved to the North America DEI team, where her work is primarily focused on external engagement and partnerships. Prior to BCG, Lisette taught high school in Miami and New York City. She is originally from Georgia and completed her Bachelor of Arts in African Studies and Economics at Harvard and her PhD in Education at the University of Pennsylvania. And last but not least of our esteemed panelists is Shai Poulard. Shai is NerdWallet's head of global diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and has 10 years of professional experience in various industries, including tech, retail, banking, biotech, and entertainment. She is entrepreneurial and innovative in spirit, with a passion for aligning people's skills, company resources, and development opportunities for the needs of the organization. Prior to joining NerdWallet, Shai was head of diversity, inclusion, and employee experience at Relativity Space and an inclusion strategy manager at Facebook. She holds a Bachelor of Science from California State Polytechnic University and an MBA from Pepperdine Business School. So again, welcome our three panelists. I'm very excited to engage in this conversation with all of you. And so I'm going to jump in and get started right away. So I'm going to start this first question because all of you, from the bios that we were able to hear and from the work that you've already done, it's clear that all of you are experienced DEI leaders who have been doing this work before the launch of our MLT Racial Equity at Work certification programs. I'd love to start this conversation by having you share more on how you got into DEI work and racial equity work specifically. So actually, I'm going to kick it off to Shai, then I'll go to Lisette, and then last I'll hear from you, Brenda.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Crystal, and so great to be here. This question is a loaded question, so stay with me because it's definitely been a journey in my career, but I did not start my career, and I love to say, on this side of the chaos. I started my career, as Crystal mentioned, in biotech. I started in a more technical capacity, doing research and development, and then eventually moved to technical consulting. A common theme for my career in the 6 to 7 years that I stayed in the biotech industry was a lack of belonging before the term belonging was even coined or championed, and a lack of focus on people as a number one asset and the driver to business results, business impact, and also, success of a business. So after doing some self-reflecting, I realized that I enjoy being analytical. I enjoy solving complex problems, but I also enjoy developing people. And in every role that I had worked up until that point, I had been the person to just champion a learning and development initiative or a, DEI initiative without even really knowing that that's what I was doing. So I said, okay, there's something here. And at this point, it's not them, it's me. And so I decided to leave the working world and go back to school full time. Decided to pursue my MBA because I like to be a Jill of all trades. I kind of like to know a little about a lot of things. And I figured an MBA would be the perfect place for me to go hide and figure out what I wanted to do next in this realm of people development. I originally thought it was going to be CSR, but as I started meeting with people, I was like, okay, I don't think CSR is what how CSR sometimes is practiced in the workplace is not what I really want to do or what I'm striving towards. I had the great fortune of meeting an incredible woman who still is, very known in this space as an inclusion strategist and an engagement officer. And based on my working experience, kind of where I wanted to go, she took me under her wing, brought me in as her number 2 for a small startup company that was focusing on, engagement and people development and really defining what that means and being a leader in the space. And through that opportunity, I was able to help her build out a manager training program, an individual contributor training program, and also some DEI initiatives. And that's where I had my aha moment of, this is it. This is where I should have been all along. It really combines my passion, again, for people development and fostering that sense of belonging in the workplace, because the reality is we spend most of our time at work, right? And if we are not in spaces that really see us and create the opportunity for us to be our authentic selves, to do our best work, right? We essentially live a life unfulfilled. And so from that opportunity, I never looked back. I immediately went into a role focusing more on talent development. And as the company grew, I picked up DEI work and also culture and engagement. So for the last few years, I've been at that intersection of learning and development, DEIB, and culture and engagement. And the reason why racial equity is incredibly important to me in this space is the reality is the playing field isn't leveled, right? And historically, the approach to this space has been equality, right? Let's build these policies and processes and strive for equality, where the reality is that because the playing field isn't leveled, equality doesn't work. So it's important as organizations that we are really looking at who are our people, meeting them where they are, and building our processes and policies with the one with the most need in mind. Because I find that, and in my experience, when we're building with the one with the most need in mind, everyone wins up the chain. And so that's where I've spent, my time in this space, is really helping organizations understand, what does equity really mean, and how do we truly embed that in the employee life cycle, from onboarding all the way through someone deciding to pursue another opportunity elsewhere.
Thank you, Shai. And your journey is quite interesting. It actually is very reminiscent of the journey of DEI in corporate space in general, where it started off separately, started off with kind of initiatives, and then eventually bore itself into something that became concrete. And I imagine Lisette and Brenda can share with us briefly how that has impacted their work, and again, how they were able to get to this space.
Yeah, so I'm happy to share. I think my sort of journey to where I am today also is very much that, a journey to kind of enter DEI in a formal way. But I started my career, as Crystal mentioned, as a teacher. And I think was drawn to education, for the reason that many teachers get into it, loving working with children and wanting to expand educational opportunity. When I was teaching, I think I became very acutely sort of invested and aware of the ways that race was really important to the day-to-day interactions between students and teachers, and in particular, the way that it was often kind of made invisible. And so I would see my students, interested in having conversations about race or racial injustice within our school system, and teachers feeling ill-equipped or uninterested in embracing those conversations. And so that kind of put a fire in me to try to help bridge that gap within my school, but ultimately decided to pursue a full-time kind of focus on that and through research. So after teaching for several years, I moved to Philly, where I now live, to work on my PhD in teacher education with a focus on, how do teachers learn to think about race and equity, and how does it impact their classroom practice, and what are the ways that we can support teachers in learning to more productively engage in a sort of racial literacy as they prepare to support students. And so that was my focus of research. It was a really kind of invigorating time to just dig into what racial equity kind of means for interpersonal interactions, and then, doing more reflection and learning on systemic racism and white supremacy, and the ways that race kind of is infused in our systems. And so as I finished that, thinking about where I wanted to go next, I think probably reminiscent of what Shai was just talking about, I think not quite sure how I wanted to take that into practice, but landed on consulting here at Boston Consulting Group as a way to sort of interestingly get more embedded in, major corporations that make decisions that can have positive or negative impacts when it comes to, deepening the status quo with institutional racism, or potentially kind of working against that. And so came here open to trying different things, but definitely with an interest in social impact and racial equity. And because I started in 2020, the timing was good for me to have engagement on, corporate projects where people were thinking about racial equity. And that included getting connected to MLT as this certification process was getting underway. And so that was my first sort of engagement with this particular program. After a couple of years on the consulting side, I knew that my real interest and passion was really around racial equity and DEI. And so there was an opportunity to shift from being in our consulting practice to being on our DEI team full time. And I took that opportunity. So now I focus on external engagement. And I think what's exciting about that is, and I know we're going to talk more about certification stuff today, so I won't go too much into it, but, I think a lot of times organizations like mine begin this work, and that's important, focused internally and thinking about what kinds of initiatives that our company needs. But I think there's real power in thinking about the broader ecosystem of organizations that are invested in this work, how we can kind of lift each other up and do more by connecting the dots and understanding best practices and not trying to reinvent the wheel. So that's what I do now. And that's a bit about my journey.
Thank you. And actually, Lisette, you did a great tee up for Brenda. Brenda, as I shared in her bio, has quite extensive experience in the DEI space and has been doing this work and working with so many. Brenda, I would love to hear more from you as to what was appealing about the value of the racial equity at work certification programs for someone that has your, level of experience in being a chief member as well as supporting other DEI efforts. What was the value in choosing racial equity at work, and how do you see it supporting you as a leader and also your organization?
So this opportunity came at an inflection point where we had already undertaken in particular a particular focus on the Black professionals at our organization. And so we'd already committed to a particular plan, and we're looking at exploring how we were going to implement it. And I have the great privilege of having amazing leadership at my firm. So it was actually the chair of my firm that said, hey, we had a partner come to us and talk to us about this opportunity. He said to me, this looks like it's going to be a good amount of work. We're not doing this unless you're on board. Take a look at it. Let me know what you think. So from a starting point, knowing that I had the chair of my firm on board with the initiative, that was highly encouraging to me. And then as I started to explore the pillars and look at how it aligned with some of the work we were already doing, It really resonated with me for a few reasons. One, at law firms, a lot of times there's a bifurcation and a hierarchy between the attorneys and the professional staff. And so for me, I've been lucky to be at a place where that bifurcation has been less acute, but still a reality. And because this particular initiative, unlike some other initiatives within the legal industry that are primarily focused on the attorney experience, allowed me to bring to the firm this opportunity to think holistically about all of the professionals at the firm and not just not just the attorneys. This appealed to me as well. So that was one of the main criteria. I also, the pillars, the internal and external pillars, so not just focused on representation, but thinking about the impact of culture, the inclusion piece. We all know in this room and in this conversation that if you don't get the inclusion and belonging pieces right, you do all your recruiting, you try your hardest with the retention, and you're not going to have the success and the advancement and really have meaningful change. And so focusing on culture, understanding how our impact externally also had an effect on how people internally at the organization perceived us and how they viewed us as a organization of choice. In addition, our core values, I know that everybody talks about their core values, but our core values really are tied to public service. We are a for-profit law firm. We have tons of huge corporate clients that we love, that we do so much work with. We also have an incredible pro bono commitment. And so this allowed us to think about our community investment and to make sure that that was aligned as well. So the pillars spoke to me. And then in particular, as I said, the engagement, not just focused on our attorneys, was really important to me.
Thank you, Brenda. And I love that you brought up the fact that you were able to encompass the entire organization. And as we think about the pillars that we have, there's representation, compensation, workplace culture, which are those three internal pillars. And our external pillars are focused on our business practices, as well as those contributions and investments. As a person who's been in DEI for quite some time, and for all of you that have been in DEI quite some time, you often know that this can be a lonely place. When you want to see real progress and you want to kind of try to galvanize other leaders in the space, it could be hard because the initial reaction could be, that's not my job, or that's not my role, or I don't know how to do that. And so one of the things that I love about what we've developed is that it requires that you all create this kind of operating team. And you pull people from all across the organization so that you as a DEI leader aren't just doing the work alone, but you're helping others along with you understand how to use that equity and inclusive lens as you're looking to make progress. And so I would love to hear from you, Lisette, on what has been the value of having the Racial Equity at Work program that provides this roadmap and that has such alignment across multiple business functions that allows this program to not just, to Brenda's point, focus on representation, but the value across the organization from top to bottom.
Definitely. I think that it's been really helpful to kind of get all the information, all the data in the same place and have sort of consistent metrics that we use to help show people like where we're at and where we're trying to go. And to your point, when we have this framework that, says, hey, if we're thinking about advancing equity, which is something we've committed to, it actually is super complicated. It's not just increasing representation at BCG. And so I've found it to be a powerful tool for conversations with senior leaders who are invested in the idea, but don't always know what their specific role is. And so being able to go through the planning process and break things down into, root causes and activities, and then tie each of those things to specific owners with an encouragement, as I think you guys are all speaking to, that those owners don't all exist in one function, right, but are embedded throughout the organization. It's led to some great conversations with our firm's senior leaders who, again, like you said, may not have always thought about DEI as like sitting within their realm, but can now see the way that we frame the activities that, hey, this is a part of our organization that you run that has implications for equity. And here's how we believe like you can, make step change for the organization. And it's really not something I can do, like you have to do it. And so that's been really fruitful with our leaders.
Hmm. And that actually brings me to a great conversation I remember having with Shai. And to kind of point this out, NerdWallet was a standout organization because they understood what we meant about bringing the right folks to the table. And early on in our conversations and our meetings, and even when Shai got brought onto the team, that team had very clear ownership of who was driving what. And I would get the opportunity of sitting in on those meetings, and I was being challenged in great ways where they were saying, hey, we're in finance and we're trying to figure out a better way to do this than what we thought. So Shai, I would love to hear your thoughts on how was NerdWallet able to galvanize the right people and the value that this program has been able to bring for you to actually further your impact outside of what is normally considered the DEI space.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. So I was fortunate to walk into, a company that leaders, and we call ourselves nerds, right? So nerds alike had a strong appetite and really wanted to engage in this space and champion this space through the lens of ownership, right? And I think Lisette touched on this, is sometimes, organizations may say, yes, this work is important and we want to invest in it, but that's your job over there, DIB team. Tell us what to do and we'll do it, or don't tell us what to do and just make it work, right? And I walked into NerdWallet where, again, there was a strong appetite to not only champion this work, but again, take that sense of ownership. How we were able and coming in, so I actually joined NerdWallet in November of last year. So the company was well underway with the Racial Equity at Work initiative, but coming in, how we were able to move from, our original kind of baseline plan to certification was we actually co-created this work together. So we did not just keep it with the, owners of the program at the time, and then myself as the head of DEIB. We got everyone in a room and said, all right, we're going into year 2 of this program. Here are all the activities. Here's what we have accomplished so far. Here are areas of strength, and then here are our gaps. And we really challenged our leaders and what we call area owners to get creative and tell us, based on the activities that we want to do, what's realistic, what's feasible, how do we dig deep, and really challenge you all to really think about inclusion as a foundational driver of our work and as our company. For those of you that don't know, NerdWallet's mission is to empower everyone to make, financially sound decisions, right? Emphasis on everyone. And so we really embody that internally of what does everyone mean? And even if we don't have everyone on the team, how are we engaging in this work in a way where we can represent a greater and a broader group? And then again, find those gaps. And so one thing we've emphasized internally when it comes to the DEIB space and this racial equity work is that it should be embedded in everything that we do, similar to how finance is embedded in all companies, right? And I love, this is one of my favorite analogies to use in how I think about this space is you never really hear in times of, economic turmoil or legislative conversations to eliminate finance. And even though there's a finance team that drives finance, everyone is a steward of the financial health and the financial success of a company, right? DEIB should be regarded and treated in that same vein, right? Even though there may be a team that is driving strategy, it really is on all of us to co-create a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the value that the MLT partnership has brought to us as an organization is to help us better contextualize what does embedding racial equity in everything that we do look like. And so as an example for our racially just practices, right? Being able to work with our brand team for them to understand the importance of not just representation from a hiring perspective, but from representation from the perspective of our consumers. Do they see themselves in our organization, right? Do they resonate with what we're selling if we truly want to empower everyone financially? So that has been, very rewarding for me. And it has been a great partnership in terms of accountability and commitment and really being able to drive this work forward.
And you hit it right on the head about accountability. And so I think this is an excellent place. And I'm going to come to you first, Brenda, because one thing that's unique about our program, as Jonah shared, it's not another survey. It's not another index. It's not another pledge. it is work, but it is work that is supported in a way that most of these type of pledges and programs didn't offer at that level before. And as he shared, we start with this baseline assessment where all of our employers understand kind of where are we today on this journey. And then from that baseline assessment, that partner success team of experts that you are assigned to, they help you, right, identify areas for improvement, also areas to amplify where you're already showing success, and help you develop that plan that gets you to the next step, right? And so I would love to hear from you, Brenda, on your experience with the actual process of gathering the data and developing the plan. And even would love to hear more about how you were able to take initiatives that you already had in place for DEI and integrate that into what you were doing with racial equity at work.
So from a starting point, so I know I mentioned that we had a plan that we were in early stages of. So we were just starting to implement aspects of our plan. And one piece, and you're speaking to it, Crystal, one of the pieces of our plan that we were looking for a solution was around the accountability piece. So not just our internal accountability, but our internal stakeholders wanted to know and us to be able to demonstrate, yes, you've got this list of initiative or these things that you're planning on doing, but how do we know that we're making any progress? What are the ways in which we can have an outside organization partner with us to make sure that there is accountability for us doing what we say we're doing and for us to continue moving in the right direction? And so as an initial matter, that working with MLT provided that credibility to the plan that we were starting to put in place. So that was really important as a starting point. And then as we looked at the assessment, our baseline assessment, and looked at our areas and opportunities for improvement in the places where, as you said, Crystal, where we were like, okay, we need to keep doing what we're doing. We need to identify or make sure we know what we're doing so we can keep doing it, or see how we can also improve it. So using the baseline score allowed us to hone in on a few areas. And I'll say to this group, it also allowed me to move forward on some of the priorities that I'd had where I maybe hadn't gotten quite enough support. So by way of example, I like to use, this is in the culture, the workplace culture piece. I had been trying to move the organization to doing very regular engagement surveys. Now that doesn't need to sit in DEI, it certainly doesn't just have a DEI lens, but this DEI initiative allowed me, I already had the firm chair leadership support. It allowed me to say, hey, we really want to make progress and really be attuned to what we've signed on for and what's important to us through our work with MLT. This annual engagement survey is an opportunity for us to not only learn about the experiences of our Black professionals, but really to apply to all of our professionals in the organization. And this is something that I've been wanting us to do. Other chiefs have been wanting us to do. So let's use this as an opportunity. So it allowed us to not only weave in existing programs like sponsorship programs that we were undertaking, really looking at career paths for professionals at the firm, but to also take initiatives that we were wanting to move forward and say we should move this up the list of priority, or to sort of tip the scale in terms of support. So it was really a little bit of both. Some of it was sort of just adding on or just putting in the programs that we already had in place, some of the ideas that we already had in place, but then it also allowed us to move some things forward and to sort of move them up the list in priority.
And Brenda, just in general, how long did it take your organization to actually, collect that data and to translate what you wanted to do into a plan?
So I would say there was a lot of time involved because, and it had more to do internally with changes on the DEI team in terms of thinking about, capacity for pulling it together. So I would say that we took a good, I would say about 3 months. And one of the challenges was we were doing this We signed on in late 2020 and started our process of collecting data in the first half of 2021. And the realities of our day-to-day work, this was a new project, so having to layer this on top of existing projects, first and second quarter at a large law firm in the DEI space, it's a very busy time. And so by the time I was able to sort of, get the attention of folks and make sure that they had the information, that they understood what was going on, that I was in the chair of my firm and the CEO were very, very involved with the process. So making sure that we were identifying the right leads for different initiatives, that we were focusing on the right things. I would say that it was about a 3-month process, but it was sometimes in fits and starts where there'd be time that we were working on it and then you'd have to take a break and work on something else or something would pop up. But I would say in terms of concentrated time, making sure that we had stakeholder engagement, that people were able to share feedback on what we were identifying as not only root causes, but what we thought should be the activities that we were focused on, and that they were right, that they were reasonable, and that we were connected with people as they were thinking about what their next year, what their priorities would look like as well, because I think that's really important. I'm helping to, our team is helping to think about priorities from a DEI perspective, but as Shai was sharing, it's embedded across the entire organization. So it has to go in the overarching priorities for each of the departments and each of the areas. And so we need to make sure that we're in dialogue about, why this is the right approach or why this can't be taken on right now. And so there was a lot of back and forth dialogue to make sure we got to the right place.
And I really love that you did talk about the fact that you were doing this in the midst of something else. And so one of the things that Shai brought up earlier is that DEI can often be put on the back burner. And one of the things that our program does, as well as providing you that roadmap, but providing you with those additional consultants that can be here to help champion for you and help identify those things. So to your point, Brenda, it may have taken 12 weeks over a couple of things that were happening. That's a pretty remarkable way if you think back and say within 12 weeks, our organization was able to develop this in partnership with MLT that changed the trajectory for us. And then investing that 12 weeks led to, in 1 year, you became certified. And so in thinking about that value of time, it's also the value on the back end of what you get. And so Lisette, you're in a very special position because BCG participates in both Black Equity at Work and our Hispanic Equity at Work certifications. And as Jonah shared, they're 2 separate certifications, but they're separate to maximize impact, but you can do them concurrently. And with Lisette, you all were a launch partner for Black Equity at Work in 2020, and then you were right there as a launch partner 1 year ago. I have to do a shout out. We're at our 1-year anniversary for launching Hispanic Equity at Work. And you have been able to become plan approved for Hispanic Equity at Work and certified for Black Equity at Work. How was it for you to develop your plan, and what kind of support was your partner success team and MLT able to provide you with getting to that milestone?
Yeah, so I think the plan development process is one of the most enriching aspects of this, because you take time to really reflect on, am I connecting the activities that we're doing to something that I believe is actually driving issues for us, and then to, the metrics or KPIs that I think will actually demonstrate that this activity has done something. And so for me, that was really helpful because, we have this catalog of things that we're working on, but it was important to kind of stop and reflect on whether or not, all of these dots are connected, right? And again, as I mentioned before, some really great conversations with leaders at the firm who helped develop, hey, is this the right KPI for this activity? Does this really show that we're getting where we need to get? Will we be able to measure this meaningfully? I think what's interesting about doing Black Equity at Work and Hispanic Equity at Work, we're in a learning process, as you mentioned, Hispanic Equity at Work launched last year, but I think what we're finding is that there are lots of places where there's overlap, right? Where, investing in a living wage for all employees is investing in a living wage for Black employees and Hispanic employees. at the same time, there's places where I think as a DEI team, frankly, you know, sometimes we might group people together in ways that can be unproductive. And so this has been useful for me in thinking about, or even, you know, when I talk about root causes, like if we're talking about representation, it might be fair to say, we can group these groups together and say, these are all the groups that aren't where we would like them to be in terms of representation within our firm. But the reasons that people aren't reaching those kind of aspirations may be different across groups. And so I think that's where this sort of thinking work behind, you know, having Black equity at work, having Hispanic equity at work, it helps push us to do that thinking and pull things apart and make sure that we're connecting the dots and not having sort of blanket initiatives when we need separate ones, but also leveraging those broader initiatives that, you know, lift all boats, I think, as Shai mentioned in the beginning, right? Like if we focus on the needs of these groups together, we can find ways that actually all BCGers are going to benefit with a disproportionate benefit to our Black and Hispanic staff members. So yeah, I think that's been, I would say, as in particular, the plan development process. And in terms of working with our partner success team, you know, it's been helpful to get some like an outside in perspective on our data. So having them say, hey, you know, we noticed you guys set goals here and this is where you got, or this is where you got, you know, what do you think is going on there? Here's what we've heard from some other partners as types of trends that might inform that type of progress. Those conversations are helpful because it's easy to get bogged down in the work or just kind of bogged down in our own assumptions about what's driving change and what's not. So have really found those to be useful conversations for us.
And thank you, Lisette. And you brought up something about going forward. How do you continue to do this work? And I know we're coming to a close, and so I'm going to be mindful of everyone's time, but the landscape is changing. And for those of us who have been in DEI for quite a while, we know that this landscape is like quicksand. It changes on a regular basis. And although in this kind of post-affirmative action SCOTUS decision, when it comes to corporate employers, we know that there's actual little legal impact at the current moment, but we know that organizations are continuously evaluating their partnerships and how they want to continue to progress forward. How do you see MLT Racial Equity at Work continuing to support your DEI journey? But more importantly, how does this program actually help develop an inclusive workplace for everyone that is there? And so, Brenda, I'll lead it over to you first, and then we'll follow up with Lisette, and Shai will let you finish us off.
I think that we sort of touched on it a little bit. When you are focusing on challenges that impact communities that have been historically underrepresented. So in this case, we're talking about Black and Latinx or Hispanic professionals. When you are focusing on and thinking holistically about challenges and opportunities for these communities, you're really talking about challenges and opportunities for a broad spectrum of communities. I liken it to, you know, we used to focus on parent challenges as women's challenges, and in reality it's about challenges that people have when they're parents. So you're impacting a broad variety of people by focusing on what is causing problems for or inhibiting the progression or advancement of a specific community. And for, like I said, my major example for us as an organization is the engagement survey piece. That because for me, it's just the most concrete thing from our, you know, we're in our second year now, but one of the most concrete and important pieces that I don't think we would have gotten to without being a part of this initiative and partnering is the collection and understanding about the entire organization. It's given us insights into experiences from office to office, from, you know, manager plus positions to people who are sort of more entry level, looking at generational differences we've seen impact there, thinking about people who've joined the organization in the past 3 years versus people who've been at the organization for 10 years. So it's just given us insights across the board for all of our community, and to think about the ways that we can be impacting and improving the experiences of all of our community. by also specifically looking at what are the things we need to be doing for Black professionals at this firm. And if we focus on the things that are going to help Black professionals at this firm through this program as a part of a broader DEI initiative and approach, then we are also, as everyone has been saying, because I sound like the broken record, we're going to be making improvements. We're going to be building a more inclusive space where people are engaged, where they are self-actualizing and able to show up at work, able to do all the things that we need and want them to be able to do in the workspace, and to feel good about being at Arnold and Porter, or continue to. We think they do, but we're always looking for ways to improve. So yeah, we're on this pendulum now. So we'll ride it, because it's just been swinging really quickly this past 3, 4, 5 years. So just hold on, it's going to keep swinging.
Thank you, Brenda, for those, the insight, but also those encouraging words at the end. Lisette, for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think one you mentioned before, like, this isn't necessarily, an index with specific targets for different things, right? It's really a way of thinking about your company's prioritization and what aspirations you have across these pillars. And so I think, I mean, in this climate, right, that's helpful too, for not getting people's energy to focus on how are we defining our priorities, and how do these things fit in? How does advancing representation for Black employees actually fit into what we're trying to accomplish as a company? And I think with that, there's some things that, yes, with this particular program, the focus is, let's say Black representation in middle management or senior management. But we've been able to identify, hey, there's actually just some practices that we have for, performance management and retention support across everyone that we're finding has a disproportionately negative impact for Black employees. But if we improve these mentorship opportunities, these feedback practices, these sort of structures of, setting people up to succeed and advance, that is going to also help the broader company provide more equitable opportunities to everyone. And so I think and then there's other things like Brenda mentioned with the engagement survey, same thing for us, where it's been able to drive insights that, do certainly apply to our Black staff and Hispanic staff, but also give us really interesting perspectives on the experience of inclusion across the firm. And so I think that we're able to continually connect this to our broader values as a firm, and the way that this type of work is actually making BCG feel like a place that, people want to be and want to stay and can stay, from a variety of different backgrounds. So it does benefit everyone in that way. And I think that's helpful for us being able to advocate to continue to do this work.
And last but not least, Shai, I'll turn it over to you. And I want to note that NerdWallet has also included their employees. The nerds are very much aware and involved in this work. I had the pleasure of going to a town hall to visit the nerds and got a chance to do that. So, for you, and same question, but how do you see this supporting your DEI initiatives moving forward and the overall impact that it's brought to your employees?
Yeah, 100%. So +1 on both Brenda and Lisette on the accountability, commitment, and the ability to just assess holistically where we are as an organization through the lens of our Black employees, where we have an engagement survey, and we splice the data in so many different cuts per leader, per demographic, now we have like smaller communities. And it's really helped us, again, just understand what is the total experience of our nerds. And it's helped us be very intentional on where we need to build net new things, where we need to embed in what we already have, and what are some of those opportunities. So really where I see this partner supporting us on our journey is, again, and I mentioned this earlier, it really helps everyone see themselves in this work. and it really helps them contextualize their work through this lens. And Brenda mentioned this, the pendulum is swinging, and it is swinging hard, and we are all feeling it. I actually had a conversation with a colleague at another company this morning, and she was talking about how her budgets continue to get cut, and her company is scheduling an offsite in a state, and I won't say the state, but a state that is driving a lot of the adversarial energy in this space, and she is struggling with contextualizing why they shouldn't do their all company offsite in this particular state. And so I think MLT, and again, plus in addition to what everyone has shared, really provides us with a community, right? This can be isolating work, as I think all of us here, where this is our livelihood and also our passion, right? It can be very frustrating when the pendulum shifts in the opposite direction of what we saw in 2020. And so seeing other companies that are engaging in this work very intentionally and on the same trajectory, you know, as NerdWallet in partnership with MLT is very comforting, and it leaves me as a DEI professional hopeful that we will be able to ride the wave, the pendulum swing, and get back on course. And as it relates to our nerds, this partnership with MLT has really helped us really embed it in how we even tell the story of why we do what we do as a company. So in our DEIB town halls, we always take the opportunity to report out on progress, how we're doing, what could we do better. And so it's not even really a conversation of should we, it's a conversation of how do we continue to scale and mature.
And thank you, Shai. Thank you, Brenda. And thank you, Lisette, for all of your expertise, hearing from each of you as DEI leaders in this space. And I'm going to shift this back over to Jonah, but, you know, I +3 all of the work that you all have shared and your perspectives. We are in this space for a long time. And although the landscape may be changing, it's only changing because what we were doing was working. And so to me, that's galvanizing and hopeful. And so, Jonah, I'm going to turn it back over to you to provide more direction for those who are interested in learning more and finding out how they can also have this type of impact and bring it to their organizations.
Thanks, Crystal. Everyone, thanks for your time. You see on the screen how you can follow up. We sincerely hope that for those of you who are considering the program and have been in process, that this webinar helps you get to yes. We're excited for those of you who are new and this is your first exposure. Please follow up with us. We'd be happy to talk about your specific situation and how the program can add value. You've heard from 3 very different companies. I mean, 3 very accomplished leaders at 3 very different companies. And I think that underscores the way in which this program adds value, no matter where you are on your journey and what type of work your company does. We are in this for the long term, and we are very mindful of the context in which you are doing your work, and we're excited to add value. Thank you for your time. We look forward to engaging with you further.
Thank you.